Hello BookTube! I am here today to review the book Wild from Lost to Found on the Pacific Crest Trail. Now, this is a book that has received a lot of acclaim. It has been on the New York Times bestseller list. It was incredibly popular for past year, probably a bit more than that, and it's really made its rounds around the booktube and the reviewer community. I definitely had high hopes for this book. I love travel memoirs. I love sort of naturalistic hippie memoirs. Anyone who's basically taken Thoreau too literally, I am pretty interested in reading what they have to say. I enjoyed Into the Wild, the book about Christopher McCandless, and so anything about people going into nature, trying to find themselves, is something I'm generally on board with. Ultimately, I was one of the people who was disappointed in this book, and I found largely that this had to do with the fact that this book was very poorly marketed. A lot of people were expecting a hiking memoir, a travel memoir, and that's not really what this book is about. It's really a personal memoir about the author recovering from her personal grief about the death of her mother. And that is a very different book. And when this book does talk about the wilderness and the situations that she's in on the trail, she's either far too technical, so it's something that isn't very interesting, or it is the sort of bare bones of words that she could use. She uses words like beautiful or stunning, and something that doesn't really hold much meaning to a person like me who's simply reading the book and not hiking along beside her. So I need you to paint an image for me because I'm not there. So I think that could have definitely given me a little something else to hang on to and made it appreciate it a bit more. But because of that, I did feel cheated, because even the parts that did have that were about the wilderness didn't feel like they were about the wilderness. So ultimately, what I felt was missing from this book was really something to latch on to. There's a lot of rambling, there's a lot of, again, reconciliation about the death of her mother, there's a lot of talk about her preparing for her journey and not preparing for her journey, and trail stories from her journey. Ultimately, I feel like this book lacked an X factor, if you will. It's something that could have made it a bit more interesting. Not that a lot of other reviewers have complained that the author had, first world problems or something like that. And I don't necessarily feel that way. Grief is terrible, but it's also inevitable. And I think writing is a great way to come to terms with that. But I couldn't really. But I felt like she had to find another channel to empty her grief into than simply talking about her childhood and and writing about this experience. Ultimately, too, I was frustrated by the fact that her writing could at times be incredibly insightful and at other times unbearably pretentious and illogical. So one example is this one quote: "Perhaps being amidst the undesecrated beauty of the wilderness meant that I too could be undesecrated, regardless of what I'd lost or what had been taken from me, regardless of the regrettable things I'd done to others or myself, or the regrettable things that had been done to me. Of all the things I'd been skeptical about, I didn't feel skeptical about this. The wilderness had a clarity that included me." Now, what does that mean? I like to think of myself as a fairly competent person, but the fact that there's another undesecrated thing doesn't mean that it can undesecrate you. And what does it mean to be undesecrated from your pain? Anyways, but that's just one example of, things that sound beautiful and sound mature, but in reality mean at best nothing and at worst terrible things. Um, but one, but here's an example of something that I liked. Quote, "The father's job is to teach his children how to be warriors, to give them the confidence to get on the horse and to ride into battle when it's necessary to do so. If you don't get that from your father, you have to teach yourself." And whether or not you agree with that, again, it's written very well. It's to the point. It combines her personal experiences with not having a father with a sort of uh, with it combines her personal experiences of not having a father and condenses it into a very compact and personally relevant way. Now, a lot of people did give this book negative ratings because they were slut-shaming the author, and again, I feel like that is terribly unfair. Like, you can't judge literature, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, based off of your perception of the actions of the characters, um, and not based off of the quality of the writing and the complexity of the characters. That said, I did give it 2 out of 5 stars, and I would not recommend it. There are other better travel and backpacking memoirs out there. So I shall see you next time. Doei!